Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials, as well as give a lot of baking business tips. Now, if you're just a beginner cake decorator, you may find this very useful because you're going to be seeing some really hands-on advice that I'm going to be giving this beginner cake decorator. However, if you run your own baking business, or maybe you're thinking of going the route of teaching classes instead, then this video will hopefully show you how to formulate your classes so you can most effectively teach. Now you might be wondering why she cut out all of those cakes. The reason being is because generally when I run a cake class, I either have them bring in their own cake using a recipe that I've sent prior, or I use a cake dummy, or we actually have two parts to the cake decorating class where we bake the cake in the first session and then we decorate in the second session. In this instance, this is just my friend. It was super casual, so we had her bring in all of her old cakes that she already had, but unfortunately all of the sizes were differing, so we decided to bring it down to a 6-inch circle. So one of the things that right off the bat I find a lot of beginners do is they don't put enough of that buttercream in the center. And generally I do like to start people off with filling their cakes with buttercream first, and then in a more intermediate class we'll add in fillings. I also do want to make note that we are using American buttercream today because it is a little bit trickier with meringue based buttercreams, so American is a great place to start. Now we're really trying to make sure that we layer these really evenly. Again, this is a very beginner skill that is so important, and we do get a little bit of tilting, and if this happens with some of your students, then there is something that you can do for that. Also, if this happens to you, there is something that we can do for that as well. So as you can see here, one of the big things is making sure that you're keeping that turntable spinning so that it really lays nice and flat and you get a smooth surface. So here we are fixing that little bit of a tilting issue, putting in a dowel, and no, that dowel is not going to stay in there. Although this cake is quite tall, it really doesn't need it. This is going to be able to support itself no problem. So we place that in the fridge for about 30 minutes, and the longer the better. Now during those downtimes you can choose to do whatever you would like. Sometimes you can work on things like making a sugar lace, or you can work on fondant details, or whatever other things that you would like to do. Or if you have a big enough space, this can be the time when you're actually cleaning up and teaching people how to actually clean their tools. Don't be afraid to take over and demonstrate as well for your students. So right here, I'm actually demonstrating how to apply the buttercream on. Now, because this isn't a formalized cake class, I'm trying to teach my friend as many techniques as possible in one go. So we're gonna go for a textured buttercream first. So what we're doing here is we are going to torch our spatula just a little bit, and this is why I like to go with a metal spatula or bench scraper. And this was a great practice run because we weren't actually going to make this a perfectly smoothed buttercream cake. We're going to texturize this. But as you can see, this is a very common mistake as well. As she's spinning it, we can see those lines developing on the side and nothing is getting perfectly smooth. This is because you need to do this in one of two ways, which I am going to show you how to do that later. But for now, because we're not actually too focused on making sure that that is smoothed out, we're going to use our spatula to create a fun texture. Now here, we actually texturize this a little bit too much. And what I mean by that is we dug in that spatula a little bit too much. So I'm just demonstrating on the bottom row here how to make sure that we're creating a texture without digging into your cake. You just want this to lightly dance on the outside, and notice how quickly I'm spinning that. I'm spinning that quite a bit, and I'm just gently moving that spatula up very slowly. And I must say that this next time around, she really gets it right. And this is why it's so important, guys, to take those in-person classes. Sometimes online just can't do it justice. You really have to see it for yourself. Now, we're not going to keep that texturization. We are ready to make this a nice smoothed buttercream look. And this time around, she does a much better job of it because she holds it in place and does one swoop all the way around. So you can do it the method where you keep spinning it really fast, and then eventually your buttercream will lift and create a perfectly smooth outer edge, but I find that it works good when you do that one big swoop as well. It also depends on what type of buttercream you're using. I find when you want to constantly keep spinning it and just hold that spatula in place. That works better for meringue-based buttercreams, but for American buttercream, I find the one swipe works best. Now, this isn't perfect, but it's a lot better than those first few times. And now we're just cutting off that edge of buttercream on the top. I'm also showing her today how to do a drip cake. Now, we do end up putting together a few different decor options. Now, I won't say they go together super well, but when you're teaching a beginner class, sometimes it really isn't about that. It's about fitting in several techniques. That being said, from a business standpoint, you can separate out your techniques so that way people will want to take more classes. Now, this class itself, and I say class very loosely, but it did last around 3 hours or so for us to learn all of these different things. Now, when doing this drip, this was actually fairly easy. However, I did show her the way that I feel is more conducive to home bakers. So you can do this with a piping bag, and of course, if you're working in a bakery, you're most likely going to do this with a piping bag so it goes a lot faster. But you also have to think of who your audience is and who you're actually teaching to. Is it for home bakers, or is it for people that are aspiring to open up their own businesses? In which case, you want to make sure that you're using tools and things that most people have on hand. Now, like I had mentioned previously, I was really trying to get through a bunch of techniques. So my friend really wanted to learn how to make this cake lace, so I decided to do that. However, if you are going to be selling or advertising for your classes, it really is important what your end product looks like, because most people want to look at that cake and say, oh wow, I can do that too. Oh, and it's a beginner class. That's something that I find achievable. To fit in another one of those techniques, I'm showing her how to actually make this lace different colors. Now, there's a few different ways to do it. You can just mix in the color when you're mixing up the cake lace stuff, but the other way to do it is to dust it with luster dust, and this works best if you do want a metallic lace. And my last little thing I'm showing her here is how to create some beaded borders with fondant. Now, more than likely, you're going to break up buttercream and fondant classes. However, like I said, we're really trying to fit in as much as possible. So with this, what I learned is that, again, it's not super easy just to use a mold, especially if you haven't worked with fondant a lot. Really important that you guide people on punching that fondant in there so you get a really perfect mold, and making sure that you give those tips on how to make the mold work for them. So bend it, make sure that you purchase bendable molds. That's one of the most important things. And if you are the beginner starting out, definitely make sure that you press that fondant in as much as possible and utilize the mold to the best of its ability, and then you can go ahead and press that into your buttercream. And one little step we're doing here as well to put a little bit more of that detail in is to press in those sprinkles. We're also going to add on some buttercream swoops here, and I would say that this is the part that she probably struggled with the most. It takes a lot of control to learn how to pipe. Again, you might put piping in a different class just because it's a completely different skill than everything else that we've done in this video. I decided to add on a few finishing touches here, but of course, if you were running a formalized class, you would make sure that everything is in place and you already know which direction you're going to go in with your cakes. Now, my friend has been watching my YouTube videos, and I've also given her a few private online classes just super casually, but she mentioned that she learned so much more while in person. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!